I'm crazy.
Not behind those big rocks.
But I feel her. I hear her heartbeat. She's so close.
So what does her heartbeat sound like?
Mighty.
We cannot let you bring your war here.
Outcast. That's all they see.
I see you.
The way of water connects all things. Before your birth and after your death.
This is our home!
I need you with me. And I need you to be strong. Strongheart.
Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Pond from TheWrap, and thank you for coming to our screening of Avatar: The Way of Water. We're going to bring out some people you want to hear from. Composer Simon Franglen. Costume designer Deborah Lynn Scott. The actor you love to hate, Stephen Lang. And the one you love to love, Sigourney Weaver. Producer Jon Landau. Now, John can explain. James Cameron can't make it. I guess he called.
Jim sends his apologies, especially to Rosa and Madeline, but I got a call on the way here. Jim and I were together working all day today, and something came up that he had to take care of tonight, so he apologized to everybody, but he wanted me to thank everybody for coming out to see the movie on the big screen the way it's meant to be seen. So thank you for coming tonight. And he promised me that he'd be with me tomorrow for our foot and handprint ceremony at Grauman's Chinese, which I'm very excited about.
So I guess rather than starting with Jim, John, we'll start with you. I mean, this one basically, the seeds for this movie came basically before you'd even walked off the first Avatar, right?
Well, when we were making the first film, we said to ourselves that there are enough stories to tell with these characters and Neytiri and Jake, that if we were successful, we'd likely have to do one. But it also took us time to digest, telling Sharon backstage, after the first film. And that's what we did for a couple of years. Jim built a submarine, went to the deepest part of the ocean. We worked on re-releasing Titanic for its 15th anniversary. And when we came out of that window, it was 2012. And we sat down and started talking about what are the stories that we wanted to tell and really define what we thought would be 3 movies, not 4. And Jim came up with 1,500 pages of story beats and notes that laid out where he wanted to go. And we realized that was too much for him to tackle himself. And we brought in 3 teams, and I call them teams because one of them was a writing team of 2 people, 3 different writing teams to work with him to break down these 1,500 pages of notes into what we thought was going to be 3 movies. And it was like a TV writer's room. They were in a room together for 6 months. And one of the great things about that process, we had our art department start at the same time. And they both fed each other. We would come up with ideas in the art department that Jim would then bring the writers up to that room to say, look at this idea. And then they would find a way of weaving it in to the scripts. And Jim was really smart. He said, I'm not going to give the writers what script they're working on while we're breaking down the stories, because once we do that, they'll stop caring about the other stories. So it wasn't until we got right before the Christmas break that Jim and I sat in a room and we said, okay, now we know the 3 stories we think we want to tell. It was 3 still at that point. And we assigned the writers the movies. And as soon as we did that, they forgot about the other 2 and they just worked on their own.
But I think you guys told me when we talked last time that actually at the end of the first one, you did some sort of retreat for...
So when we finished the first Avatar film, we encouraged the studio to allow us to keep on department heads so that we could go away. I called it a postmortem. And Jim said, you can't call it a postmortem, John, nobody died. So we turned it into calling it a retreat. And we went away and we said, okay, if we're crazy enough to go back into doing this, what are the things that we need to improve to make the results better, to make the process more efficient? And the thing that we really focused on that came out of this was the facial performance. And, you know, Sigourney, you were a part of it on the first film, and you remember we had a single camera, and we changed it now on the new movies to 2 high-definition cameras. We encouraged Weta to create a whole new pipeline where they weren't working from the outside and, you know, working on the skin, but they really went inside, and they're driving it all by muscles so that they can interpret now these images with these 2 high-definition cameras by a whole new muscle system. And, you know, thankfully, we could finally showcase the incredible performances that we got from our cast.
Well, let me ask Sigourney and Stephen, when you hear there's going to be another Avatar, is your first thought, well, too bad I died in the first one?
Oh, yes. Well, yes. I mean, I wasn't quite sure what happened to me because it was sort of psychedelic, but I assumed that I was not going to be present in the same way.
Anyway, Sigourney, no, but Jim then calls you up, and tell the story about Jim calling you up and wanting to be a 14-year-old.
Yes. Well, actually, we met in person because I happened to be out here, and we had lunch, and Jim had this idea of maybe there would be a character who had some sort of connection to Grace, but he wasn't sure what it would be. And we just sort of started talking about this young girl who just loved the forest and felt more comfortable there than she did with people, felt more comfortable with plants and animals than she did anywhere else, and what kind of girl she'd be and what she would be like and how much she'd be part of the community and how much part of the natural world. Anyway, we just threw out a lot of questions, and that was in 2010. So there was a lot of time, I think, for Jim to think about the potential of that. And of course, I went away and thought, oh, she could have like camouflaging, potential and all these crazy things, which he ignored. But anyway, I had a lot of time to think about this character, Kiri, and so did he. But it was a nice beginning because it was just 2 people spitballing about this idea inspired by Grace.
Did you have to get over the idea that, and get your head around the fact that he's asking you to play a 14-year-old girl?
Well, I mean, as I have said publicly, he was quite clear that he felt that was my mental and emotional age, that this would be easy for me because I was so immature, and that this is what I was like all the time anyway. Actually, when we started shooting, he said, well, well, I hope you can do this. And I said, no, for years you've been saying you're sure I can do this. And he said, well, now I hope you can do this. So it was scary to me. I don't think I've ever been as nervous before starting a character, but in a way I'm grateful for that because it really made me work so hard and so deeply so that by the time I actually stepped into the volume, she just pushed me out of the way. Said, get out of here.
She did. You would see before she went in to perform, it was Sigourney Weaver. And she was having these intellectual conversations with her director about the character. And then we'd go, in action. And all of a sudden, there was this 14-year-old empath of herself. And it was just amazing to see. And it was great. And I think that it's one of the exciting things for me is it illustrates the potential of what performance capture can offer actors. It can really offer them the opportunity to play characters that they could not otherwise play. And when you see these incredible performances, it's these guys doing it. These are not animated characters. This is their performances that are realized, and she transformed into Kiri.
Stephen, what about you? I mean, how did you find?
I concur. I think Sigourney was remarkable.
Nicest thing Quaritch has ever said.
And I mean that. It's a towering performance that Sig gives in this. I'm so proud to work with her. And for me, it was, it was different. What's your question?
But for Stephen, though, on the first movie, you really didn't do performance capture. Sigourney
I
had
did
that
about
experience.
5 days of performance capture on the first movie. I did enough to know that I liked doing it. It was really cool. The battle I have at the end with Neytiri and Jake, I did performance capture for that. And then in this, but I will say, I did feel from the get-go that performance capture was it's the defining process of Avatar. If you had to say what makes Avatar, I think very, very high on that list would have to be the process of performance capture. So I wanted to be part of that too. I love being live action, but since I got killed in the first one, the only alternative really was to come back as a performance capture character.
It was an opportunity, though, where we gave your character actually a little bit more depth, I think, than really in the first film.
You see, I'm so shallow that I had never actually realized I didn't have depth in the first the first time out. To me, that was depth. You know what I mean? But looking at it, truly looking at the script, in the original Avatar, Quaritch was a wonderful character and a colorful character and a flamboyant character in his way and had all kinds of, charismatic qualities, but he essentially was a function in a way. He very much was like Bruce the Shark in Jaws in his own way, who is a great character as well, of course. But the idea, and this is such a testament credit, I think, to Jim Cameron. The fact that he thought this character and all of these characters, every character in this saga is an aspect of Jim Cameron. And this was an aspect, the Quaritch aspect, and that's very much a part of Jim Cameron as well, was one that he felt was worth exploring, was going deeper on that was owed more maybe than just being, Bruce the Shark. And he told me very early on, this is in 2007, we were still filming the first. He said, we were having a party one day in Wellington, New Zealand. We were having a couple of beers. And he said, you're coming back. And I said, I am? Really? And I didn't take it too seriously because we hadn't even finished the first one. So who what are we talking about, a sequel at that point? And then in 2010, after we came out, we were at a Producers Guild dinner, and he said, so, you're coming back? I said, I am. And he said, oh, cut that bullshit. I already told you in 2007 you're coming back. He got very curt with me. So in any case, I'm just going on. I'm back. Yeah. What's the question?
I don't remember. But I mean, I
I
do
went
want.
out to dinner before I got here.
I do want to ask about your character, though. I mean, he's not Quaritch, but he has all of the memories. So, are you playing like a little bit of this guy and then part the new guy, or?
I mean, sure. There, there, the essential Quaritch is there, but then there's Pandora. There's the way of water that's operating on him, and that if you think about Quaritch, he's not a character who cops to confusion ever. He's and now what's happening is somewhat confusing to him. He doesn't quite understand what's happening. The way I've always thought of it for my own self is that in the first movie, he's very much a right-angle character. He thinks at right angles, he moves at right angles. Pandora is not a right-angle world. If you want to be successful in Pandora, then you better learn to be agile, you better learn to be sinewy, and you better learn the way of water. And it took 2 arrows in the chest for him to kind of understand that that's where he had to, that's what he had to do. But he never not a stupid man by any. He does learn, and so that's what gets added, to the mix. And how it happens is a mystery. I don't know what I did. But.
Okay. Well, whatever you did it good. So, Deborah, I want to ask you. I mean, you think. In the abstract, you would think, okay, this is the movie where it's performance capture and everything is created in CG. But you actually, those costumes weren't just designed, they were actually made, right?
Yeah, we had to make everything. Just like they had to perform everything, our departments had to do everything exactly like you would, plus more, because we had to help them inform their performance capture performances while designing the world for them. And it was really gratifying to have them be involved as actors with my process. So you're watching them act the scenes, which then could inform you when you went back to the drawing table, which was really wonderful. And Stephen helped me design the unit patch for his unit. And Sigourney was, I have to say, my biggest fan, I think, because she would come up to my room and wander around, and it was as if it seemed to me that it was in just helping her get there in real life, that we wanted those tactile things to put our hands on. And they had to have some performance pieces to interact with, because that's the nature of as well, right? So Stephen would wear this heavy vest, and he would wear big boots, and she would wear a little shawl and a medicine pouch and all of her little trinkets or anything that would help, just like any actor wears. So it was a long process and a really gratifying one, but a little bit up and down and around rather than just direct.
So in addition, what I want to point out is Deborah actually built, I think, over 2,000 pieces of Na'vi costumes. And we built them to photograph them. We built them to simulate them, to put them in water, to see how things react to them, to see how light reacts to them. Because if we want Weta effects to ascribe to something to look real, we have to give them something to ascribe to.
Yeah.
And that was it. But more importantly, and Deb touched on this, one of my favorite moments in the movie is Kiri and her shawl when you arrive. And if Sigourney didn't know that she had the shawl, and I think that was something that Sigourney wanted for her character, to have that. And to have that there when we're doing the performance capture, we would not have gotten that incredible, great moment where she's so uncomfortable getting to the reef at the first time.
I found it so inspiring to go up to your room because, you're doing performance capture, but at the end of the day, someone else is going to actually make vivid what your character looks like. It's not going to be someone you see in the mirror. So I found it incredibly exciting and inspiring to go up and see Kiri in these various, pictures and what she'd be wearing. It was also perceptive of you to know how she needed to be governed, when she wanted to be free, all those things. And, all those things are so valuable when you're working in performance capture. They just like explode because they're not very many of them, but they're very powerful.
Yeah, and also I think the fact that we had a lot of talks, we had a little more time than just, here you're in a fitting room, put this on, and then go act the scene. So we had time to sort of discover things about each other and discover things about the characters. And one of the things that Kiri is, she's a collector. You know, she's the one who would, you could walk anywhere. She could walk through this room now and find a little bit of that, and sort of attach it to her body in some way that was very magical. So, you know, she led me to many things about that character.
Stephen, did it help you to have the vest or the boots? Or?
No.
Yeah, yes, for sure. I mean, you ask about performance capture. Back in, you get into wardrobe and makeup and wardrobe, and that's where your character occurs. Fellini said that the character occurs in the makeup chair, and that's true. And it occurs when you put the wardrobe on. Well, when you're doing performance capture, I'm not wearing my all the camis, and I don't have my scars and all of that stuff. What I do have is I have a performance capture suit, and I have whatever I need, and that becomes my wardrobe, and that becomes my uniform, as it were. So sure, I took and I was very careful with my patches. I wanted them the way I wanted them. I'd get pissed off if something wasn't, on immediate call or something. I'd go all Corch on people and shit,
No, he wouldn't. No, he wouldn't.
Never on Deb, but never on her. Yeah. Only on the lackeys,
The important set people, Stephen. I just want to say one more thing about the performances in general, and I think that, in our early concept art, before I came on the picture, Kiri had long braids like Neytiri. And it was through this process of discovering this character with her that we ended up going with the short, fluffy hair, which is such an amazing part of who she is as a person in the movie. And I think also you didn't have much hair, so we couldn't help you out. But that to have bits of hair on the performance capture helmets or in the swimming pool or whatever, so that you could react to it, so you could feel how it felt. But I thought that was a really beautiful part of your character that set you apart.
Before we get to Simon, because I know we're going to get to Simon.
Yeah.
So people don't realize costume design for us is not just the wardrobe. Deborah talked about the hair. That was her domain. And we get into the tattooing or the war paint or all of those things. We look at that as designing the character. So to us, costuming, and it starts with that, and it's something that I got out of really when we were going back to the Dick Tracy days and working with Milena and all of that. So anyway,
one of the things that I about the hair, I went and saw the pictures in the art department. I'd go and kind of lick all the pictures because I was trying to absorb the world. And Kiri at that point looked very composed. She had braids. She had a little band. She looked very much like Neytiri, and I knew right away that she would never, first of all, think she could ever become beautiful and powerful and composed like Neytiri, that she had to look the way she felt inside, which was kind of like a mess. She didn't want to care about how she looked. And she just didn't want to, she wanted to be like Spider in the woods. So somehow the artwork can also push you away and help you find things that are important to you.
So, Simon, down there at the end, let's talk music. You worked on the first Avatar. Most of the music for that was written by your close friend James Horner, who died afterwards. So, how did you come into this, and how do you work with what James left behind, and then add your own spin to it?
I think there's a couple of things. One is that I was working on Pandora, the World of Avatar, the park in Florida, and I'd been overseeing the music for that. James had written some themes, and then obviously after James died, there's a point where Jim and John said to me, would you continue doing the park and finishing that? And that involved about 5 hours of music. There was a lot of music to do inside of that, including the two major rides. And sometime around we finished that May 2017.
Yep.
So sometime around December 2017, Jim and John phoned me up and say, yeah, come down and read some scripts. And Jim said to me, I need you to read all of the scripts. I need you to read 2, 3, 4, and 5. Part of this thing, and I think
A week later. No.
yeah, and that was part of the thing I think that's really important is that everybody here, I know, and we've worked together. And there's this strange situation where a composer who is normally somebody who comes in right at the end and never sees anybody because we work in our hovels and just write music. The Jim and Jon, it was really important that I was part of this process from the outset. And in the very first paragraph of script 2, there's a thing where it says, Neytiri sings the song chord. And the song chord became this thing. I had to write the theme for Neytiri to sing. And there is this moment, so I wrote that in January, February of 2018. And then sometime March, April, there's this magical moment when Zoe, in front of 100 technicians, sings this live. What you see on screen is her singing live. It's not pre-recorded by me in the recording studio. That's the live take. And that's part of the thing, that there is this beautiful thing that happens, this sort of organic process between all of us. And then that process evolved. Now, one of the things we wanted to do was obviously bring some of the great themes. There's the ICU theme from Avatar 1, which was an important part that I brought. But Jim also said to me that it was important that he wanted, and I'll use this in the sort of way it's meant, he wanted a more thematic score in the way that there were themes associated with characters and people rather than there being more about the feeling, which was what happened in Avatar 1. So obviously we had to have a family theme, which is a variation of the song chord, but we also needed a Metkaina theme, something for them and that when the water. There's also Payakan, who needed his own theme, that great thing of Loak and Payakan, and Quaritch and the RDA. Jim said to me, we need our own version of the Imperial March. And finally, of course, Kiri, who needs her own musical moment because that part of that link that Kiri has with the planet is something that Jim wanted me to bring into the music. So these were all things that came into the process. We already had our Jake and Neytiri theme that James had written, and I had to evolve from that. And the other thing is that there was a lot of music to write. Jim did give me 6 minutes off, I think, in the entire film. But there is a lot of music, and a lot of this is spent underwater. And the thing is, when you're underwater, the music has to act as a sort of narrator for you because there's no dialogue. And that's part of what my job here was to do, was to give you that emotional flow. And I think that's one of the things where having that early access was important.
Not only is there no dialogue, Simon, but there's no sound effects underwater.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't hear that. So what you're experiencing in the scenes we call the first swim or Loak and Payakan, and whatever you're feeling, you're not getting that from sound effects. You're getting that from his music. And that's...
I mean, it also strikes me that there are so many moments in the film where it basically says, we're going to stop and we're going to look at how beautiful this is, where you're not trying to drive the plot. You're saying, okay, we're going to fly now, or we're going to swim now.
Well, look, I think that, movies have an opportunity to be a metaphor for the world in which we live. And I think we all need to stop and appreciate the beauty that is around us. I think we spend too much of our lives running, not paying attention to that. Let's take a deep breath back and look at all the beauty that exists here.
I mean, on another level, this is just an enormous accomplishment to pull off something of this scale and complexity. So I want to go down the row and say, was there a moment, was there a certain thing, was there a challenge where you thought, I don't know how the hell we're going to do this?
Every day. But the remarkable thing, and this is a testament not just to the people here, it's a testament to the 3,800 names that are in the credits. We threw out obstacles to them every day, and they overcame them. And I think back when we were doing Titanic, there was a moment, and Amazon didn't exist at the time, where people thought it was daunting where we were going to get to. And I went out and got department heads a book, and I inscribed it. I know we can, I know we can. And the book was the little engine that could. And when we were about 8 weeks away from this movie starting, someone who had worked with us on Titanic came in with that book and said, you know, I still have it. I know we can. I know we can. And every day, everybody's attitude was, I know we can. Give us the problems. And you need a support system to work with people when things don't work. Because when you're going down a path that has never been traveled, you're going to make mistakes. And actors need to feel comfortable with that and the challenges we present to them. A composer needs to feel comfortable. A costume designer needs to be comfortable. And our crew needs to be comfortable. And we need to have what I call the Avatar family there to support them and pick them up when they need it.
So, Sigourney, I mean, were there moments for you where specific things where you thought, how am I going to do this?
Every day. Every day. And
talk about the swimming, because that was a challenge. The holding your breath, that idea.
yeah, I mean, Jim would talk about our doing this swimming where we'd be holding our breath for a minute and a half or something. And that was like conservative, actually. And I think for me, I just thought, well, I can only hold my breath for about 30 seconds, period, let alone when I'm moving. And yet, Jim never throws out these challenges unless he backs them up with help so you can get there. So we started training with Kurt Crack, who teaches the Navy SEALs. I guess it was May of 2017. And we had our first session in the pool, my husband and I, and we were able to hold our breath for a minute, just still in the water. That surprised me. And we kind of built from there. We were never asked to do too much right away, and we always felt like we could do it. I mean, we did it very gradually, and by the time we actually had to shoot scenes in 15 to 30 feet of water for, 2 or 3 minutes, we were that comfortable in the water and that confident, and it was fun. It was scary. I never quite got over not being nervous about it, but we also trusted it.
And what was your longest single static, not swimming around, breath hold?
I did 6.5 minutes.
Woo!
But I wasn't moving.
I just also want to touch on something else we did, because I think you might find this interesting, is on the first movie, we went to the rainforest of Hawaii, and we rehearsed before we went on to the performance capture stage. On this movie, we went back to Hawaii again, and not only rehearsed in the rainforest, but we went into the oceans. And we snorkeled on the coral reefs, and then we did perhaps the most Pandoran thing one could do. We went on a night dive where we sat on the bottom of the ocean in the dark abyss, and out of the darkness came giant manta rays. You felt like you were on Pandora, and Sigourney was there, and the cast was there. And I think about that moment when they were going over us, and people had that sense to reach up. And then I think about the performance that Kiri is seeing on the screen, Sigourney giving, when the stingray, the Pandoran stingray comes by, and she reaches out. We had done that.
So, Stephen, you had to fight with Sam Worthington underwater, right? How was that?
Oh, well, I trust Sam, and so that went pretty well. I mean, I never kind of went into panic mode. We got that well, but yeah, I was thinking about the question you asked, and any crisis of faith that I had would have come probably on the first movie where I was still learning my way. This one, I went at it with, the arrogance of the uninformed, essentially. But there was a day early on, we were shooting a scene, Sam and I, where this hasn't occurred yet, actually, where we are tumbling down through, foliage and everything, so our fall is getting
Movie
broken
3 giveaway.
by foliage. Talk about giving away. You've been talking about the ash people, I can't. Lately, Jim and Jon have been uncharacteristically bubbly about things, it seems to me. But in any case...
Have you seen the grosses?
But in any case, we and what happens, we finish the fall, and we get up and pull our knives and try to kill each other. And so we were doing the knife fight. It wasn't the fall, it was the knife fight, but we had to end the fall. And so we were on this incline, about a 45-degree incline, and boom, take a tumble. And we'd done it successfully 3 times and everything. And then on the last time I did it, and I wear a knife on my back. And I wear it, it's an RDA knife, and I have it in a plastic sheath. And the sheath got turned a little bit, so when I hit, the sheath cracked my back. And I thought I'd broken my back. I thought I'd fractured my back, but I thought, whatever, get up and go on with the fight. And I got up and I turned and I fell down and I was gone. And I thought, and, they helped me and I went back to my dressing room. And I thought, I sat there weeping because I thought, I'm done. I think I'm out. They're going to have to go on. And then I got over that pretty quick and started rehabbing really quickly. And so I think I probably, there was plenty to do that didn't involve me. So I could take 10 days or whatever it was to kind of rehab and did. So, yeah. But I still got a crick in my back. Anyway, that was a bad feeling.
Right. Deborah, did you have a single biggest challenge?
Almost every day.
That seems to be everybody's answer.
Yeah.
But if you don't, you're not challenging yourself.
Yeah.
That's right. You have to love the challenge of a Jim Cameron film. And I think that the biggest thing is that he works at a level very high, and he expects all of us to come to that level. And, what Jon was saying about the community of people that helped us get there, but honestly, he's the one that would facilitate all of the getting there. So, he's a master of it, and without him, we couldn't have made it. I think that's 100% true.
I'll give you the money I owe you.
Yeah, here.
Simon, was there particularly tricky music?
Well, apart from the fact that he asked me to write just under 7 symphonies worth of music for this film, we can start there. But I think the one issue we had actually was while we were working in New Zealand, there was a point where we started. The idea was that I was going to come down, and Jon built me a beautiful studio down the hall from Jim. So the idea was that Jim would wander down the hall and we would work together. And initially that worked brilliantly until New Zealand went into orange alert, at which point we all went into lockdown and we had to go into work bubbles, because the worry was that all of us, imagine that we all came down with COVID, that the entire production might be shut for 6 weeks, say, while everybody was recovering. And obviously people could get sick. So we were all in these different bubbles, and those bubbles continued, and this is probably February, something like that.
Longer.
Yeah, and so the bubble stopped. The next time I actually physically saw Jim was July the 9th. But for that 5 or 6 months, I was living proof of severance. Jon and I were in the same building, and every morning I would get up, and I would go down in my elevator, and I would get on my bicycle, and I would cycle around Wellington Bay, and I would go into my bubble, which was 3 other people, and I would see 3 other people, and I would write my music for the day. And I also had remote people working in England and in Los Angeles, and often I'd be working at 10 o'clock in the morning and 10 o'clock at night. And then at the end of the day, I would cycle around the bay, and I would get in the elevator and go up, and then I would go to sleep, and then the next day I would repeat. And I'd say that in terms of the best way to write a film score, that is pretty far removed from it.
Yeah, but Simon, you had another challenge too, which I just want to call out because I think you did a phenomenal job on that as well. The score certainly, but the end song, where it was really important for Jim and I that if we're going to have some song at the end, that it felt organic to the film, and you worked with Abel on the weekend to really make that happen.
It was something that, in this case, there was a situation where Jim and I talked about, well, should we have a song on the end? And I wrote down one name. I said, if we're going to have a song, it needs to be with The Weeknd. There were no other choices for us, were there, John?
No, and I flew to New York and met with him in July, and then he had some diversions in his life and his tour, and we were very late to the game. And
yeah, and so September he started sending me a track back, and I'd sent him some ideas, I'd sent him some themes, and got him the concept, because one of the most important things here was that Jim wanted a song that felt like it organically grew from the film. We all know this thing where we see this pop song that has been stamped onto the end of a movie that has no connection to what we've seen before. And Abel, who is he's the single biggest artist in the world at the moment. And Abel sent me a track, and then I would say, right, okay, let me do some things now. Let me bring Pandora to the song. And so I brought the Na'vi voices, I brought the big drums, I made the chord structure so that it felt like the bit when they're swimming to the surface. I took some of that vibe, that thing there. And then Abel would say, well, let me rewrite the melody, let me rewrite the lyrics. And then Jim got involved, said, hey, how about we tweak the lyrics this way? And that was a collaborative process that I think was very special for us all. And I think he's done a spectacular job.
And I really look at the song that you hear at the end now as the father's lament in our world. It's Jake. His voice is Jake talking about the loss of his son and paying for the father's sins. And it's in English. And then we have Neytiri singing Songcord, which is the mother's lament, and she's in Na'vi. And I think those are two beautiful ways to sort of really end the movie with. So good job, Simon.
Thank you.
Before we wrap up, and I know we have to finish, but John, when I talked to you and Jim in December, you said, we have these other movies written, we have number 3 largely filmed. It depends on how this one does as to how far we go with them. Considering how this one has done, can you say we're going to see all 5?
Let's just be clear. Jim was the one who said, let's see. I never doubted. So to me, we were always making these. The cast has given us incredible performances already into the first act of movie 4, and we're ready to do it.
Okay. Well, thank you all, and thank you.
Thank you, and thank TheWrap for tonight. Sharon, thank you.